apsis of 1.768.
Translation.
Wasn't paying attention and let my relative inclination get way out. There's our target, 1.768, and I'll have some relative inclination to take care of here in a moment. That was just sloppy takeoff. If I'd held my heading a little better, I wouldn't have made that mistake, but that's okay. All these things are correctable. It's just a little less efficient. So next thing I need to do basically is to get ahead to the apoapsis and circularize my orbit. So we've got 1,000 seconds to go to apoapsis. This won't require too much of a burn.
Translation.
Okay, I've got the apoapsis at 1.768 and the periapsis at 1.768. So the next thing I'm going to want to do is make a little correction on that relative inclination, and I'll do that at the next node, which is over here. Let me speed ahead a little bit. These always confuse me a little bit as to which one is the ascending node, which one's the descending node. I believe this is the ascending node, the one that's boxed in and not filled in. This one's filled in. I believe that's the descending node. And if I'm backwards, then I'll just live with it. I'm pretty sure that's the ascending node, so that would be anti-normal. And just to double check, I'll do a
Rotation. Translation.
small burst of forward translation. That's making it better, so I got it right. A little bit of main engine burning there. That's all I'm going to get on this passage. And that's not as low as I would like it. Okay, that's all I'm going to get on this passage. So next thing I need to do is just warp time ahead to the burn, or to the ejection point. I'm going to see if I can get a little bit more correction in my relative inclination, because sometimes even at different points of the orbit you can still improve it. Do a small burst with translation. Okay, let me go the other direction. That's helping things. Even though I'm not at a node, I'm still getting some improvement here, so that's good. It might throw off my periapsis or apoapsis a little bit, but that'll be okay. Still getting some improvement. Now it's starting to go the other way, so that's kind of low. It should be better than that, but oh well. So we're coming up to the burn here in about 1800 seconds. Oops. Turn that off so I don't waste a bunch of fuel. And before going into this burn, I'm going to try one more time to see if I can get a little more correction on the relative inclination. Okay, that was worth it. $800 seconds until the burn. 600, 500, 400, 300, 200. $60 seconds, okay. And burning. Of course, I'll be burning until the delta V is 0. Actually, I'll back off a little early because I always, never want to run the risk of overshooting. So when it gets down to about 150 or so, I'll start slowing down the main. Okay, start slowly backing off the main. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, backing off the main a little more. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. A little more with the main. 2, 1, and catch the rest of it with translation.
Rotation. Translation.
Okay. Now what you can also do here is, with a little bit of lateral translation, you can bring the semi-major difference all the way down to near 0. And that's your 1 and 3 with translation. I'm not sure how to tell which one to use. Just try a small burst with 1, and if it doesn't improve it, then use 3. And this won't get all the way to 0 either. It'll get close, but eventually it'll start going up, and when it starts going up, like it is right now I can do a little bit with the other direction, and that's as good as it's going to get. And it looks like my delta V, I can hit a little bit of reverse just to bring that to 0. There we go. Okay, so my relative inclination is pretty low. Usually when I do this, I actually have it lower, but I screwed up when I took off. I wasn't paying attention to my heading, so my relative inclination got a little bit out. But it's pretty low. Delta V is low, and my semi-major difference is low. So the next thing to do is to warp ahead until we get to the first point of being able to do a mid-course correction. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and close I'll leave the retro doors open just in case. It's going to turn the APU on and close them, but now the point where you do the first mid-course correction is when you get out of your escape plan. And that will basically happen when the moon's gravitational influence is basically down to 0. And it takes just not quite 36 hours. So one day in 12 hours, it won't be quite to that point, but it'll be pretty close. Probably like one day in 9 hours or something like that, just to give you an indication of how long it'll take. So I'm going to warp time ahead. I'll go all the way out to 10,000 just to make this quick. And quickly back off. One day, 7 hours. One day, 8 hours. And pretty much any moment now. See, the gravity's all the way down to almost 0. We'll break out of this escape plan any second now. And there it is. And once I get out of the escape plan, you don't have to worry about immediately doing your mid-course correction, just within a few seconds. So we're done with orbit MFD with the moon. We don't need that for anything anymore. So let me shift my attention over here for a moment and just basically take a look at the situation as it changed. First thing to notice is this is our orbital path, and currently it has us not only missing the orbit altitude of the ISS, but actually it has us now impacting the Earth. That happens. It's not always easy to get to have your initial orbital altitude hold all the way from one body to the other. It often changes. So the first thing I'm going to do is switch over to maneuver, turn that on, and with a little bit of outward velocity, I can bring my projected orbital path back up to an altitude that I'm more happy with. And this probably won't take too much. That looks pretty good. It'll probably still change a little bit, but that gets us a little closer to where it needs to be. Now the next thing we need to do is to make a mid-course correction on our plane change. This one has always confused me up to this point, but I think I've got a pretty good handle on this one now. Let me try to explain something here. If you've ever used, hopefully you have, because if you haven't, then this might not make a whole lot of sense. If you've ever been in orbit around the Earth and you've used the aligned plane MFD, one thing you'll notice when you get to these node passages, the ascending node or the descending node, and you do a burn that will bring your relative inclination closer to 0, one thing you'll notice is this particular pointer, when you're at the descending node or the ascending node, it's almost directly in line with the node. Again, I'm going for a target apoapsis of 1.768. There's our target, 1.768, and I'll have some relative inclination to take care of here in a moment. That was just sloppy takeoff. If I'd held my heading a little better, I wouldn't have made that mistake, but that's okay. All these things are correctable. It's just a little less